It's interesting to see that how certain body parts are just like easy to respond, and the other ones are like, yeah, you can go eat shit and die, bro.
Hi DJ, how are you?
Hey, Dimitri, I'm doing good, man. Yeah, just came off, was working, just doing a bunch of editing right now as a pseudo creator. So pretty fun.
So is it something new that you just kicked off or is it part of your business?
It's currently part of my business. We're basically trying to hit all different angles in terms of marketing. So we've gotten paid advertising up. That's been going for about 3 to 6 months, and now we're also looking for organic traffic. So we're posting on the strategy is pretty simple: short form content, and launch it on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. So it's a lot of editing. I just spent an hour trying to find music to add to 30 seconds of video. I still didn't find anything.
So
So,
you record your own video and then add sound, right?
yep. So I'm using I picked all this stuff up literally like 2 days ago. So I'm using this tool called CapCut,
Hmm.
which is interesting, but it's a really fast tool for you to basically stitch together videos, audio, music, add in some like funny effects from here and there. So it's been pretty interesting.
I might ask you to send me a link because I'm also doing editing, and so far I'm just using very basic the iMovie for Apple. It's like
Yeah.
it's free, it's working, it's doing its job. It's not anything spectacular, but it works.
Yeah. I've used iMovie before. I actually just went through, I think, like 5 different tools before I settled on this workflow.
Hmm.
Um, but I used iMovie like way back when, like the early 2010s for school. Then I didn't do any video recording or any editing until like this week. And I tried to see Canva, CapCut, VN Video Editor, Instagram, TikTok. The list is really long, but I basically settled on CapCut as a pretty easy to learn tool and a lot of like drag and drop. So for the most part, it's been super sweet. Just have like no problems with it.
So let's talk about your business because people would not know what we're talking about. How do you start
Yeah,
there? What is it? And how is it going so far?
sounds good. Selling drugs can be pretty hard because sourcing. Imagine. I'm currently running an e-commerce business selling products online. Might as well be drugs at this point. But no, I'm currently working with my friend and also technically my co-founder. He's been basically following this like small group called Athletic Truth Group. They're like just a small fitness community, really focused on trying to build longevity into your athletic training. So we're currently have two products that are basically targeted towards that kind of group and people who are interested in athletic longevity. And currently we offer it primarily in Europe, so it's really nice. We're first to market here, and so far we've been able to beat the majority of our tiny competitors. Yeah, let's just say we've been using some tricks to really make sure and follow along if we're actually doing well, if they're beating us. So overall, pretty interesting business. Lots of things to do, lots of things to learn. I don't know anything about e-commerce. I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know anything about the list of I don't knows is longer, but every day it's a little bit more of a challenge. And it's awesome to be able to put time into something and really put energy in, and that having a very non-linear return on your personal time investment. I think this is personally something I don't really see corporate being very effective in. You put in 10 hours, you put in 40 hours, it's the same output, but the outcome will never change for you personally, right?
As I was
So
looking in the history, I actually noticed that it wasn't always the case in the history. There were companies back in the days where your outcome was proportionate to amount of work you put in.
yeah,
I mean, we
I,
kind of can say it in sales, right? Like people say sky's the limit in sales, but to some
yeah,
extent. But for normal jobs, for like management and other type of things, I've noticed in the history where companies where they actually would reward you as much as you put in.
yeah. I think this is also there's definitely limits by geography. So in US, as you know, like tech companies are awesome in rewarding with equity and some sort of stake slash ownership in a company, public or private, right? So the idea is that you're really, whatever you build, like whatever you personally have a role in building, you're also contributing to the company's greater good. The company's like, thank you for your services. Here's a paycheck. And here's a multiplier in case we get a multiplier. Here in Europe, the tax and legal implications of all this stuff is so complex. And also people just don't understand it. And again, the mindset's really different. So in Europe, you really don't see optionalities of like major equity. It's like, I'll give you, I don't know, as an example, like 2,000 euros worth. Most Europeans will look at that and say, can you just give me 2,000, euros instead on my yearly paycheck and we can call it even? Again, like the principle of what they offer is super low. The recipients don't understand it. So it's like a whole system that's just very disadvantaged for anyone who wants to look for like a lucrative lever, especially financially. But that's just my personal findings. I'm sure there are some secret unicorns out there that are like, giving crazy equity or some sort of stake and just really rewarding their employees. But maybe I'm just terrible on my job search and I haven't found it. So fuck me.
Talk about living in Germany, in Frankfurt, right? That's where you are right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
you're
yeah.
originally from New Jersey, as I remember.
Yeah, that's right. I was so just how how and where I grew up. So I was born in India. I lived there for about 2 years. I also grew up for a few years in Saudi Arabia for about
Mm,
5 years. Lived in Miami for about 2.5 years, and then settled in New Jersey for about 20. And 3.5, no, yeah, about 3.5 years ago, I moved to Frankfurt to Germany because of my girlfriend, and now the mother of my child as well. So it worked out.
congrats. Yeah, yeah. Have you lived in other places in Europe? Just Frankfurt?
Yeah, just mainly Frankfurt. Would like to. I visited quite a bit. So London is really like an awesome hub. I also spent quite a bit of time before I joined Liatro, the company that we were at. Spent some time in Amsterdam, quite a bit of time in London, a little bit of time also in Iceland as well. But this is pretty much just being a vagabond, right? So like you don't really have it's not a home, but you're kind of just trying to check it out. And for me, I was really considering to moving to these places as well.
So how you compare Frankfurt to all the places you've been so far, where you lived periodically or just visited, maybe other cities in Germany or Europe? How would you compare Frankfurt?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of traveling in my 20s. I think I covered like, I don't know, 30 to 50 countries, like, I don't know, a lot of different cities as well to just evaluate, can I live here? Do I see a potential? The answer honestly comes down to like every single city sucks for some reason. Always. I'll always find something wrong with it. Um, and since I grew up in New Jersey, that's the suburbs. For those who don't know, it's just houses, lots of houses, like not really like city and like no downtowns. So when I moved to Frankfurt, I thought it was actually great. It's super convenient. In Germany, almost every single city here, especially even the big ones like Munich, dude, they're just super German. Like they're really not international when it comes to food. The people maybe because there's a lot of Turkish people here, but that doesn't necessarily make it international. It just makes it a German city with immigrants. So Frankfurt, on the other hand, is actually properly international. And all of this based on the kind of cuisine that's offered, and then the ratio of really good international cuisine to basically to like their, let's just say, native, right? So in the case of German food here, there's like literally one street or like two streets with like the majority of German food, and the rest of it is you can get everything. So
Hmm.
Frankfurt has been super awesome, and it's really tiny. So you can really like walk from like one end to the other in, I don't know, like an hour and a half max. So it's convenient. It's got good food. So far, pretty good.
I remember beer was cheaper than water, right?
Beer is still cheaper than water, even though we're in a recession, basically. That's still true.
So I visited you about what, a year or two ago.
Yeah.
I
A year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember food was pretty good. I didn't expect it to be quite different from what I had in Berlin.
Mm.
And they had this kind of green sauce. like herb green sauce that they put on stuff. And I like going to this kind of small mom and pop taco shop restaurants slash bars. Everything's so freaking cheap. I remember it was like 2 plates with like beer or two, and it was still like 20 euros.
Yeah, that's exactly what I really like about Germany in general. The cost of living is seriously, it's fucking cheap. I just got laid off and I'll probably end up taking, what is it, unemployment. My girlfriend's on parental leave and getting like jack shit for money from the government. To be honest, we still have savings in the bank, like on a monthly basis. Like we're not even working basically. And this is how like easy life is here. If I tried that shit in the US, I'd be dead in like a month because, I don't know, I get hit with this insurance bill or something else. So financially and then physically, I'd just be destroyed. And here in Germany, it's just super chill. It's like super comfortable, pretty easy. Also really cheap, I would say.
And that's what I remember, the headquarters of ECB maybe located, or Eurozone something, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's where
yeah.
they meet and make important decisions.
Yeah, I actually live right across it. Yeah, obviously I can't show you because I'm on like a little bit away, but I'm on the other side of the river from the European Central Bank. So originally it was in downtown, like the original building. Then they moved it all the way into like the East End.
Oh,
So
okay.
just like it's a massive, like, I don't know, 50-story glass building.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. Seems like a waste of money, but I mean, it's the Europeans.
Uh, Offline, we've been talking about traveling. Could you talk about your experience traveling and your favorite places thus far?
Sure. So I've traveled since 2000. I mean, again, I moved around a lot as a kid, but like my main traveling started in 2012. So I took a school trip to Mexico. That was about 9 days. And then since then, almost every 3 to 6 months, I've traveled to a different country.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my two favorite countries, like hands down, were Japan and then definitely New Zealand. And I think in one of your podcasts, you were also talking with Bainey, right?
Bunny.
Bainey, yeah. Like his words were literally like, I'm like, did you live my life or did I live yours? And like, it's super weird. So I think we both have like a very, maybe it's a very common story of like immigrants who moved around, didn't really have a home, kept moving around, and it feels like it's still a common thread even in your adult years as well.
100%. Yeah, I still don't feel like I found home. I live in Dallas and not quite my cup of tea. Like what you said, like you always find something that is just not right.
Mhm.
And I think in Dallas have significant amount of, to me, what is not right. I think it misses on like the cultural aspects. Places like maybe New York, LA, Chicago, you have this gigantic cultural aspect to your life, many venues, many clubs, live music, what have you. And here it's either here and I don't care about looking for it, but it's
Mhm.
definitely not in your face. Like festivals practically not existent. Maybe there's like state fair. Big emphasis on sports, but there is no like hang out and the vibe of like hang out and um, go out, see nightlife. There's like rooftops, like drinks, cocktails, take selfies against the backdrop of downtown, but that's not quite what I call nightlife. But back to
Yeah.
you.
No, no, no. I've been to Houston. I was just really like maybe dumbfounded because you just have to drive everywhere. But it's weird because it's like a city at the same time, but it's not, right? Like
Mhm.
or in my head, a city is like everywhere where you can walk, or you can get some sort of public transportation that's really convenient. And you have Houston, which I don't think it's representative of every single city in Texas, but it's just really wide fucking spread out. It's like you need a car and everyone drives a truck. You have massive buildings, but I'm like, I don't know where anything happens here. I'm like, I'm really confused. And if you want to get from one place to another, I mean, the public transportation seemed like it kind of sucked. So like it's weird to have, drive a massive truck in a city. In my head, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So I imagine Dallas is kind of the same. Lots of big buildings, but again, Texas, a lot of open space. They somehow call these, cities like the major cities, but they're still in the middle of like nowhere, right? That's basically Texas. So I think that's also what's a little bit unique about, as you said, Dallas.
Yeah, you definitely need a car. You have buses in, I guess, within 2 to 5 miles from downtown. You can kind of get away with buses. There is a train line or light rail. It can get you to airports and places, but yeah, you struggle. Like you have to either walk to bus station for like 15 minutes, or it's just infrequent. So the de facto people use cars.
Yeah.
And Houston also, yeah, I would echo that. I didn't find it to be also any kind of lively atmosphere. It was just like meh, like nothing really special.
Yeah.
I think Austin is a bit better than that. You kind of can feel there is a vibe going on. There is like some excitement about life. These places just like, we work, we sleep, we go eat, we watch soccer, some sports on TV.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I remember you've been pretty big in bodybuilding. How is that so far? Not so far
Yeah.
at this point of your life, because you was much bigger. Like a line from a movie. I forgot what was it. No pain, no gain. You're
Yeah.
big, but I can make you bigger.
Yeah. It's funny. Yesterday, my friend and I, we just joked. There will definitely come a point where I think I have enough kids. I'll definitely consider the use of some sort of performance enhancing drugs. Um, I mean, it's just like, why not? Like, let's just see how freakishly big I can get. But as of right now, I think I'm going pretty well. I think the only thing that I've kind of noticed is, sure, there's been a body composition change. Sure, training's been fun, been super hard. But after having a kid, dude, it's fucking rough. Like trying to push your shit in the gym, and then while being a dad and husband at home, it just fucking sucks, right? So I've dialed it back. I'm hitting the gym still like 3 to 4 days a week, but not trying to go too fucking crazy. So yeah, I think all in all, I've been trying to just maintain my weight, just see if I can do some version of like main gaining. Just don't worry too much about keep the weight a little bit
Definition.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your group of your body which responded to exercise the most?
Yeah, my chest and my arms are just stupid. Like I literally don't have to do any like I can do probably one exercise a week, and I can get my chest and my arms just bigger. I don't know why, and I fucking hate it because what I actually need is like bigger shoulders and a bigger back, and I can also use bigger calves. And guess what? I train like exclusively, but see jack shit results in my legs, my calves, and my shoulders. It's literally like and then my back as well. I'm like exclusively having literally like 3 or 4 days a week of just legs, back, shoulders, and then calves from time to time. Yeah, that shit's not moving, man. So it's interesting to see that how certain body parts are just like easy to respond, and the other ones are like, yeah, you can go eat shit and die, bro.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you. I noticed early on in my life when I was still a kid going to school, I would
Yeah,
somehow was this tradition that do morning exercise, just like cultural aspects. Like if you want to have healthy kind of lifestyle, even when you're kid, like there is such a thing as morning exercise. I'm not sure how it came about, but in school, on TV, people like, hey, I do morning exercise. I do morning exercise. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing morning exercises. So I would put my legs under the couch and I would do abs. I would do like push-ups and maybe sit downs. But what I noticed from that age is that my abs grow like easy. Like I need like maybe one repetition of like 30 or 40, and I do that for a week. That's it. End of the week, I see a six pack. Like I'm not fucking joking. And right, it's to this day, same shit. Like I don't really emphasize abs in my routines at all. I start to get back to, I guess, kind of positive mindset and taking care of my lifestyle after COVID and just kind of other stresses in my life. So I'm right now making sure that every morning I have like some thought process, like what I'm doing for a day, what I'm focusing on, and in general, like vision for life. And part of it also is push-ups and do abs. So I do 30 crunches. Just lay
yeah,
down like half crunches, 30. That's it. I already see abs again. So like it doesn't require anything. And then I think my back is responding pretty well. I do usually pull-ups and I do kind of this rowing pool or whatever you guys call it.
Yeah.
So I can put decent weight and I can see definition and muscle are growing. As far as arms are somewhere in the middle, chest doesn't grow at all, and legs doesn't grow at all.
Yeah, yeah. I would also just say like you have Russian genetics and God, those just Eastern Europeans in general just can get freakishly big. And I think the spectrum is generally favoring more towards muscle and muscle size. So it may not again distribute everywhere or for every single person, but in general, like you're on the more I can probably get big or I can at least seem leaner pretty easily. And then you'll have I'm half Indian and half Nepali. If you've ever seen any sort of like Indian bodybuilding shows, man, these guys are like you'll see like a 6 foot dude weighing in like a 120 class. I mean, this guy looks like he just needs to eat. Like you just want to take him home and be like, "Are you a refugee? Like, have you eaten?" You're like, "No, I'm bodybuilding." Like, which part? Like, there's seriously like I don't know. Maybe it's just me or maybe I'm fucking crazy, but I think Indians just don't have this sort of like genetics to get super big. The only exception to that is in the north, where I believe the Persians came through and kind of like mixed blood and whatnot. There, you'll find like people like Punjabis, they just get ridiculously big. But that's the exception, though. Like
I
the
think I
majority,
saw that, and they're a bit more dark skin, right? Up north.
it can depend. I've seen light skinned. I've also seen dark skin is like super dark skin is usually more in the south.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in general, like at least the oddities and the people who are probably have some sort of let's say bodybuilding potential all from the north. I would almost bet my I wouldn't say my life savings, but I'll bet $10 on this.
So we know there are a bunch of supplements, nutrition that people trying to push on us from Amazon and commercials. From your
Yeah.
personal experience, and you've been doing bodybuilding for quite some time, which supplements actually do any meaningful impact on your physique?
For me personally, so I mean, I think that just from a scientific point of view, I think the ones that have been like the most researched have been creatine, which I don't know why people consider a drug. I mean, it's been super. It's probably the most or well researched supplement out there. The effects are even crazy. It's past just physiology in terms of what your physical benefits are. It'll also benefit neurologically. It's supposed to help with brain or something. So I think if you're more fatigued, you can take creatine. This will generally help with focus and some other effects, right? So I think creatine in general is super helpful. The next one after that, it's a supplement in the sense that you can take it or you don't have to. It kind of depends on from each person. But whey protein or any sort of milk protein or some sort of protein powder. So I think that's really helpful for people who are like, I can't get my protein in. Just in general, for the majority of normal average people, if you're trying to get in better shape, instead of trying to cut out all these different foods, if you just work out consistently and are doing proper form and progression, you can literally keep your food the same and probably just add extra protein and you'll see like insane results. Like you'll gain muscle, you'll lose fat. Basically, like the first few years of most people who've never trained before, their first few years are basically like on steroids,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they can literally go for a run and they can get muscles, and you're like, you can't actually do that at a higher level. But for beginners and for again the majority of people, adding more protein with protein powder is honestly like super easy. It's literally just one extra shake, and that's it. So those are usually the two. Personally, I've tried a bunch of different like supplements, done dosing, done timing, tracking over a few weeks, scaling, cycling on and off. So I think what works for me, creatine is still a little bit of the one that I can't tell if it works or not. I don't really see a difference in my strength. I don't really see a difference in my size either. So I've just been taking it for like, I don't know, 5 years every single day, 5 grams, same scoop. So I'll take creatine. And then sometimes I'll take casein, which is just a form of protein powder. So it's just supposed to be
Oh,
store.
casein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So casein for me is it's a little bit more filling. Like whey protein is for me equivalent to drinking water. So it just like
Mm-hmm.
goes straight, and I'm like, now I'm just at 140 calories and I'm hungry. So casein at least has a little bit more substance. But this again, I'll just do it from time to time if I just don't feel like eating or whatever else. So I think those are like the two main ones. And then I'll just get multivitamins. So that's usually the other kind of supplement that I'll add. It's nothing crazy, but it's just to make sure that I'm covering my bases just in case anything's missing.
For me, I found that glutamine works extremely well. That I would say, as you mentioned, right? Creatine, you know it should work, but you haven't seen really results. You just take it as a religion. I know for a fact for me, glutamine works extremely well. I think I can recover much faster. I think sleep is better. But what I definitely noticed is, when you do really heavy exercising, and some people, it might be different parts of group, different groups of muscles. But for me, when I do really heavy legs or when I do really heavy chest, these two would be in such pain for like 3 days. Like, for example, if I do legs, I won't be able to sit on the toilet. Like, it hurts. I mean, I would, but obviously. So glutamine, once it kind of accumulates after about a week, I would say, the pain drops by like 80%. You still do your normal exercise. You still know you put in work and it should do what it typically does, but you have about 80% less pain or no pain almost at all. So that's one. And it helps with immune system. Or another example of why I think it works. I grew up on eating a lot of vegetables, fruits, and I think I adapted my body to this over years that if I don't eat salads, for example, for like 3 days, or vegetables in general, I would get sick. Like, this is no joke. I would get sick, like runny nose and like some minor cold. So it would take me just a couple of days to notice that difference for me. I guess the intake of minerals, nutrients and such. So if I take daily glutamine, and I just take in the morning 1 scoop, just 1 teaspoon, so about 4 or 5 grams. That alone, I can be without vegetables for a week, 2, 3, doesn't matter. As far as I can tell, I'm not gonna get sick. So glutamine is one. I like L-carnitine, although it tastes pretty acidy, but I do notice it gives me that boost of energy, and theoretically it helps you to metabolize under skin fat. So you should look a bit better if compared to where you wouldn't take it. What else? So BCAs, I've tried them before. I don't see any impact on me. I think it's practically gimmicks, but obviously some of those amino acids are pretty important. So glutamine, by the way, is one of them. And I just distilled somehow through try and error that's what works for me. So I don't get the complex BCAs. I just get glutamine and that's it. So L-carnitine, glutamine, I have creatine. What I noticed, I think it gives me slightly more power, so I can maybe bench a bit more, and maybe that a bit hype euphoric state that can push you through. And that's about it. But the reason I don't take any proteins and such, for one, I didn't see much value in them from my personal results, and two is I remember doing blood work and I found that there were 2 enzymes that are found in liver that were elevated. And my doctor said, look, man, so you're doing sports, you're doing gym, you're taking supplements. Let's just do experiment. Let's just drop supplements for a month and do a blood exam again. And he was right. It came back to normal. I think it's called AST and something else, these 2 enzymes. So once they are elevated, that basically means that your liver is kind of under damage and it's leaking those enzymes in the system. So that was for me kind of a call saying, look, for one, doesn't seem to do much to you and you can just keep eating more chicken or something. And two, seems like liver doesn't like it. So I try to minimize and just take in what I truly see results, and it's glutamine, sometimes creatine, and sometimes L-carnitine.
Yeah, I think it's been I also had something similar. I forgot exactly what was elevated, but when I took protein, it was really in the US pretty consistently, like almost every single day religiously. There was trying to remember exactly what it was. There was two specific enzymes that were like significantly elevated, like beyond normal levels by an X factor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't really mean much. I mean, they were like, that's weird. I'm like, does it mean anything? They're like, nah, it's fine. And I also did the same thing, right, where I experimented specifically, and what I did is dropped my protein powder intake. And I think that alone already ended up fixing the majority of the like elevated enzyme. So it's, again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like I didn't really see any adverse effects. Like I didn't feel tired, or there was nothing like very obvious. It was just, again, if you did blood work, you would have noticed this. And funny enough, I think whatever elevated enzyme that I had is also, if I remember correctly, it's the same thing that helps with lactation for women, which is really weird. Yeah, I think it's called, yeah, I think it's called prolactin, if I remember correctly. So it's really weird for a man specifically to have elevated prolactin. Um, because as far as I know, I was born a man and I don't plan to breastfeed any sort of children, not even my own.
Well,
So
look, you said you have a no trouble growing chest, so maybe you can breastfeed as well. Big
yeah,
boobs.
definitely, man. Yeah, and funny enough, on the whole topic of man boobs, the reason why I really started working out, like I think 13 years ago almost, was because my sister came up to me, and I was pretty fat dude. Like I was 250 pounds in high school. 246 was like my peak, and I think I pushed past it. I just didn't record it. Um, but like my sister came up to me, and then she's like, hey DJ. I'm like, hey, how's it going? She went like this, went into my chest and scooped my titty and went scoop, and like got basically like a handful of titty of like my man boob in there. Uh Instantly, like every part of my like my psyche was totally destroyed. I'm like, I can't have that done to me by any single person in my life ever again. And since then I'm like, just fucking cut the fat out at that point.
Wow, that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think my sister doesn't realize how much of an impact that like small little scoop made to my life, but it was definitely a huge driver to get me started, let's say.
Okay, let's switch gear. So you've been consultant in States and you've been consultant in Europe. Where do you see similarities or differences, and how would you compare tech scene in general between States and Europe?
Yeah, maybe let's start with consulting. I basically started my career out in consulting in 2012. Joined a really big firm, did tech consulting. Moved on to more strategy consulting, did basically a various amount of, I'll call it loosely tech consulting, strategy consulting, and a bunch of different mixes. So all in all, I'd say there's a lot of similarities, right? What consulting comes down to fundamentally is someone basically has a problem. Your job is to either figure out what's wrong and tell them what to do, or actually go and fix it for them. That's like the simplest way that I can think about it. And it's almost like a plumber, right? So if something happens with your toilet, you're not the expert around a toilet, most likely. Like you're just an average person enjoying life, and you just shit the toilet a little too hard. So you call a plumber. Plumber is also a consultant, right? They'll come to your house and they'll be like, "Hey, I saw that you took a massive shit. Um, we can fix it. Here's how." Or looks like there's gonna be a lot more damage. We can fix the toilet, but maybe I also have to replace your walls that you took a shit on. Um, so so just as that kind of example, right? So consultants can do kind of what I call is like they can figure out what's your future state, where you need to go, which is more strategy. And there's the other ones who implement the actual strategy and say, let's go in that direction that someone else said or that we came up with. So again, this is true in literally any country that you go to. So that's maybe consulting as a whole. Now between US and Europe, I've really found quite a lot of or quite a few similarities and then a few differences. Um, Politics at the end of the day is still super, it's just, yeah, let's just say it's very, 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 it's a constant, right? So when you're in consulting, you're basically brought in, in the most pure way as a person to help solve problems. But in reality, you're kind of there as someone else's political agenda like 90% of the time, right? You may be thinking that you're like, if you're very like moralistic, that you're doing something right, that you're really going to go help make a change, that you're going to like level up people's job. And quite a lot of that time, like that's maybe in your head, but in reality, someone's trying to get you to make sure that they can get their next promotion. So that stays, again, that also holds very much true in Europe, as well as US, right? So that's how your clients interact with you, what you see as value, what they want to drive. Like there's always going to be a bit of a conflict. It's never as pure or idealistic as a lot of people push it to be. Now, some differences, just trying to think through some key ones. Usually the politics, but like how these things actually happen on a day-to-day basis, I'd say are pretty different. In Europe, I've actually seen that there's a lot, significantly more politics to the point where there's almost no work done until every single person feels like that they're aligned, which is theoretically a never-ending, exercise, right? I mean, for God's sakes, like when you have more than two people at the table, it's like someone just needs to be the fucking, adult in the room and put their big boy pants on and say, we're gonna do this. If you don't like it, eat shit, fuck off. Or, catch me outside. How about that? Right? Just move, right? That's what I really did like about America is that someone will take action. Doesn't matter if someone doesn't like it. There's a lot of gossip and saying like this person's an asshole, this person's a bitch, whatever. That's cool, but someone at least did something. In Europe, I found a lot of indecision and a lot of debate. And for me, that's fine and that's cute as long as you make a decision. So for me, this is like two fundamental differences that I like working US, which is nice, and I kind of miss. And then here in Europe, I found super fucking annoying.
And how about comparing tech in general, tech scene?
Yeah, so tech scene, what's the easiest way to say this? So in US, I would say that the tech scene, it's 2023. It's generally on the kind of, future pace. Here in Europe, it's 1990s, man. SAP just came out and starting to hit all the big corporates. And that's literally what it feels like. The tech scene in terms of what actual tech companies and tech is actually out there, for me, it's just not impressive, right? If you try to even compare it on a ratio of tech companies that are successful based on unicorns, IPOs, whatever in the last 10, 20 years, compared to some of their other peers like in US or Asia. I mean, Europe is just like way back in terms of, that ratio, right? And separately, I think that comes down to a few different fundamental factors. So the reason why it's in the 1990s is one, just the way that they think and that the way they are culturally. I can't say that every single European country is the same, but there's a lot of similarities, right? Like I can't say like a Texan and a person from Boston are the same, but they're both American. And I think this is kind of still true, even though an Italian and German may feel like that they're fundamentally very different. From the outside, they're both European. And the truth is like they actually have a lot of fundamental things that are similar. So there's an element of it that's cultural. Separately, there's a lot of, legal. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like the way that the entire environment is set up, it's just really meant for bigger businesses to accelerate and thrive, and for everyone else to basically, as I said like 5 times already, eat shit, right?
Regulation, right?
Yeah, regulation, correct. So the regulation here is just, I personally don't think that it very much favors younger companies at all.
Competition in general, right? You can't have newcomers to market. It's just established for old timers.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. And I think that people who have, let's say, market presence, Asia, or even, let's say, outside of Europe, because you have access to a lot of resources in terms of people and capital, it's much easier for you to expand into Europe. So in general, like I started 2 different companies. One I started in US. I mean, literally like the legal filing and everything took me 30 minutes, right? Like you go on any of these websites, you pay them what, $280, and 150 of it is like what the legal fees are. And then the other is a premium, but in $300 in 30 minutes, you have a company you have a legal company and all your tax information that follows through within the next few weeks. Here in Germany, when I set up my company with my partner, it took us something like 4 months, and I still have no idea if we're like legally existing or not. I don't fucking know. And so we're kind of just taking stabs at the wind, and we're slowly thinking that we do exist, which I think we do. So anyways, it's just very, very, very strange because the barrier to entry, and my partner is also German, but still trying to understand the regulation and all this stuff. It's just super technical. And it's just made to be like super hard. So I think that's the second reason I think tech is behind people, culture. I think I somehow it's split in my mind, culture and like the people into a few different aspects, but fundamentally I think they just think differently, right? Or and act differently. I think it's super cool in Europe to be in tech, but when you're like, hey, you're going to be in tech, that means like no one has any idea what's in front of us. Like we're literally figuring out day by day, which means your workload is variable, right? So Germans, as an example, like they're like, oh, I work in a startup, right? Which is a cool thing to say, but then you're like, so do you work startup hours? They're like, no, I work 9 to 5. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like I don't know how to react or respond, because generally speaking, like startups are meant to be aggressive, they're meant to be unpredictable, and they could flop, right? So like, can you really have a predictable workload around uncertainty? I don't think so. So just the I don't know, just the means and the mindset of operating in general for Europeans, just fundamentally very, very, very different, right? So all in all, personally, I think tech in Europe still has a long way to go. I won't throw or I won't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I'm pretty pessimistic about where this will end up. But I think that they'll get there, not at the same volume of success, and definitely not at the same rate of success. So as I said, it's 1990s. It might literally take them 20 more years to get to like present date. So even there, they would be outdated, right?
When
So
I
that's
think
just
about Europe, I don't really recall any major names outside of maybe Booking.com, where in
yeah,
States you can come up with like 40 of them.
40 per year if you want,
Yeah,
honestly. Yeah. Here they have quite a few tech companies that have been successful, like SAP or Siemens. No, I'm fucking with you. I mean, those were like 1970s companies.
exactly. I think a lot of it came from physical manufacturing. Like Siemens is semiconductors and telecom, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, right? Physical. There is right now Ledger that does this physical key for holding your crypto. That's in France, I believe. But otherwise, UK was always about the financial center. Paris was about fashion. Germany about cars. Spain about eating and partying. Portugal, I don't even know. Italy, shoes, fashion, eating, drinking. Switzerland, banks, skiing. Norway, oil, right? Finland, who knows what they do. So there
Yeah.
is nothing that strikes you as like, oh, tech scene. I think maybe Ireland start to be attractive place for tech because of favorable tax laws.
Yep.
And I've been to Dublin last summer. Yeah, it looked pretty interesting. Country seems to be in good shape, and a lot of downtown is scattered with tech companies.
Yep. Yeah, I've talked to one of my friends. He's like pretty deep into. He's doing really well in his career. He's also running his small little business, like an angel investing firm or some sort of VC. Just all in all, he's also American living in London. We kind of came down to the same conclusions, right? If you really want to be successful in tech, it's not going to happen in Europe. Sorry, like you're basically fighting all of the odds of in general, let's say you have a pool of 100 companies or 100%. In Europe, you're working with a fraction of that. Then, like let's just assume that your rate of success is 10%, 20% from application into receiving an offer. I mean, just in general, like you're going to get 1 or 2 offers best every single time you try to go for an application round. So all in all, like you're just fighting chance and success. Now, even if you get in, as I said before, it really comes down to people being the fundamental failing element or the core element of tech being behind. See, great, you get into a company that seems great in Europe, but these people are just working in like an ass backwards way. Even when you get there, it's like, well, you can do this 3, 4 more times, and you're going to realize, is the mistake me, or is a mistake of the environment, right? So it's just much easier if you really want to be successful in tech. You can't do it in Europe. You're not going to get paid for it. You're not going to find the people to help you grow. And especially if you've already worked in a place where it's been hyper successful, either in America or an American company that's expanded like abroad, it's gonna be really difficult for you to try to find like the next level of your career and advance. You at best maintain, or what I would call slight stagnation, but probably not. In most cases, you'll actually start seeing a decline because you're essentially just waiting for the entire environment to catch up, but you lose time. So technically you get worse, right? So it's a really weird circumstance.
You're not learning from competition because your competition level is so low. Where in States is hyper competitive, in Asia is hyper competitive.
Yeah. And fundamentally comes down to that. I would still say it's the people. Like we can talk all about regulations and everything else. The truth is it's just a nuisance, right? It's like a little fly that kind of like keeps buzzing by and you're like, well, you know, it's, you can still squat it for the rest of your life. And that's where I see like regulation for the most part, but fundamentally people not wanting to push past that level of comfort consistently for a long period.
Yeah.
Just not.
Yeah, I noticed was especially it's noticeable in places like France and maybe Italy. People are way too cozy. They just want to have this life and friends and gatherings and having good time. They're not really meant to work hard, at least not in this generation. Where States, Asia, it's kind of opposite almost. We work hard and then we forget about friends and then we have depression and such.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a, to be honest, I don't think that there will ever be the word balance, as in like when you try to go for something in your life, you'll have to deprioritize something, right? Depending on how hard you want to go. And then if you want to try to like create balance, you're basically not going to do well in everything. Right?
Yeah,
It's like
I have the same idea in my head. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, all good, all good. But yeah, that's just a fundamental thought of where to invest your kind of like time and kind of the personal energy. You can try to do it everywhere, but at some point you'll notice that like nothing is, yeah, everything is just average in every single front. You're like, okay, if you're, I think a lot of people are okay with that because they don't know what standards to set against themselves. But if you have like, I don't know, a shred of self-respect, you'll realize that spreading yourself thin is just a fucking waste of time.